Welcome back to another episode of Projecting Grandeur. I am your host, Ron Dichter. Thanks for tuning in. Thank you for being part of this community. We are trying to help entrepreneurs change the world. I don't have all the answers, but I have started and exited many businesses, two of which I grew to over 9 figures in sales. So I know a little thing, but today I really want to talk about just the whole concept of learning. And when I was young, and I think back to my early 20s, there was a point in time where I thought I was the smartest guy in the world. I had started and I was fortunate enough to be successful in a business early on in my career. And in my early 20s, had a, 8 figure sales business that I eventually grew to 9 figures, by the time I was 27 years old. And when I finally had sold that business, I got involved with a bunch of businesses that maybe I didn't know a whole lot about. And I thought, well, gosh, I knew how to grow this business. So therefore, I must be really good at business. Well, turns out I wasn't. And turns out that I was really good at the thing I was doing, but that didn't necessarily translate into being good at the things that I was trying to invest in and ultimately grow. And I had some setbacks and some failures and some humbling moments in my career where I embarked upon things that, I just wasn't prepared on. And it got me thinking about today's topic on the concept of learning. And, for those of you that are just starting out, and especially if you're younger and you're starting to have a little bit of success in your business, it's really easy to think that you know everything or that your business is so, niche and specific that, if you aren't in the industry that you can't lend any sort of expertise or guidance. And I have to tell you that there have been so many people in my life that had I have not listened to them, throughout my career, I probably wouldn't be where I am today. And so it's really important that as you start embarking on your own journey, that you find people that have been successful and you listen to them. And while they may not know all the nuances of your specific business or your vertical or your product or whatever it is you're selling, they do know business. And it's important for you to listen up and learn, pay attention, write things down, and be open minded. Because again, I think a lot of the time people just simply don't realize that there's a lot of wisdom that can be heard and learned from people who have done this before. And so, my advice to you is don't think you know everything. Stay focused on your business, but be open to concepts that maybe you're not familiar with. Maybe you've never built out a big sales team, or maybe you've never scaled a supply chain, or maybe there's some technical nuance in your business that you don't have a lot of familiarity with. Find and seek guidance from people who have been there before, that have done this, and that have had successes, and listen and learn from them. Don't be so foolish in thinking that you know everything. The other part of this is that as I want to use my experience as, when I left my first business and I went out and, kind of dabbled, if you will, into other businesses. Just because you were successful in one thing doesn't mean that that translates to immediate success in something else. There's some learning that has to happen along that way. You have to be able to learn from other people who've been in that industry before. So maybe you do know everything about growing a sales team or growing a supply chain, but maybe you don't know a whole lot about a vertical you're moving into. Go seek guidance for someone who is in that vertical, understands that vertical, and don't be afraid to ask questions. Again, some of the biggest mistakes that I've made in my career are thinking that I know everything and not listening and seeking the advice of people who have been there before. My favorite thing that I hear from young entrepreneurs is it's a different time. Things are different now. It's different than when you started your businesses in the 90s. The technology's changed things. And while that's true, the concepts of business are not different. Maybe some of the mechanisms are, maybe some of the tools are, but the concepts are still very relevant and usable. So again, listen to people who've been there before, seek guidance, seek help. Don't be so silly to think that you know all the answers. And most importantly, once you do have an expertise, don't forget to pass it on and pay it forward to somebody else that might benefit from that as well. Short one today. Thanks for tuning in. My name is Ron Dichter. This is Projecting Grandeur. And don't forget, you don't know everything, so seek advice. Have a good day, everyone.